You worked hard. I know you did. And you got yourself all the way to where you are right now. Is it all that you hoped it would be? Because most of us live in a constant state of overwhelm, like skirting around the edge of burnout and wondering when the heck this fulfillment is supposed to come in. But luckily today, Coach Taryn Swanpole is going to show us 3 powerful ways to reduce that overwhelm and connect with your true self so we can finally feel that feeling of peace and fulfillment that we have all been working so hard for. Get excited because you can achieve that magical combination of finding total zen and getting it all done. The voice that says you can't is total mind BS. Welcome, Taryn. I am so curious to hear about your journey as to how you have overcome overwhelm and burnout in your life.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, it has been a journey for sure, and one that has led me down a path that I never thought I would be on. And yeah, it all kind of came to a head midlife, working a lot, sort of burning the candle at both ends and coming to a point where I just couldn't sustain it anymore. I got a health scare. I was misdiagnosed, thank goodness, with MS. And so that really put things into perspective for me. And I started looking into ways of how can I help, support myself? How can I, first of all, what happened? Why, you go through all those things, why me, and all the things. And so it took me down a path of nutrition and then, to stress relief. And thank goodness, it was a misdiagnosed and everything is good. But it kind of didn't, I went through a really depressive state. I was on medication. I was seeing my doctors, back and forth. And I really didn't want to go the medication route. So I started looking into alternatives, right? I started doing things like yoga, which I hated, by the way. To me, it was like, I was like kind of like, this A-type personality, go, go, go. I was like a gym girl and I would go to the gym and, it was always like, go, go, go. And then I started doing yoga and I was like, this is so boring. Like, and it was yin yoga too. And I, something happened inside of me where I really I came into my body, if that makes sense. I started feeling for potentially the first time what it felt like to be in my body. And so that really opened things up for me. And then I just kind of went down this rabbit hole of like, it's great when I'm in yoga, but how do I take this into my work life, balance? So it was exploring options and I came across psilocybin, microdosing psilocybin. Did a deep dive into that, and it was something. Well, number one, it's still illegal in a lot of states and a lot of places, so it was not my first choice, but I knew that I wanted to do something in a more natural way. I knew I couldn't sustain. I knew, antidepressants, sure, they have their place, but I didn't want to be on antidepressants for the rest of my life. So I looked into that and it just kept coming up and popping up and into the news and into my feed and, all these things. But I still sort of resisted it. And then COVID hit and I found breathwork as a way to alleviate stress that, was going on in the world and in my world. And that really shifted things for me. Breathwork really opened up. First of all, I was like, I can't believe that this is free, and I'd have access to this. And there are many free resources out there. And I just I had this daily practice that I did, and it really shifted things. I became so much more aware of my breath and the power that it can take me from this state of fight and flight into, rest and digest in as little as, 1 to 2 minutes of just breathing, right? So very accessible. I can do it in the car. Somebody cuts me off in traffic. I don't need to give the middle finger. I can take a few breaths and reset. And then, the psilocybin thing just kept coming up for me. And so, yeah, I started dabbling in that. I found a microdose coach who I is now my mentor and, partner here in Costa Rica. And she really helped me not navigate that with safety. I felt very, it was very scary thing to do, because there's the stigma attached to it. And so I wanted to be sure that I wasn't just doing it willy-nilly. I wanted, an expert that could help me and guide me through it, and which she did. And I mean, I went from being on antidepressants, knowing that I wanted to come off, and knowing that that wasn't, it's not necessarily a safe thing to do, just to come off your antidepressants. So working with her in conjunction with my doctor and getting to a point where I was able to come off the antidepressants and felt amazing for it. I was doing it personally for my depression and overwhelm and burnout, but it opened up so much more for me. Creativity, focus. It really, everything became more clear to me. And the breath work and the yoga combined, and I was just in awe of all of it. And I have to share this with people. I feel like it's especially things like breath work that can be utilized. It's like I say, it's free. Everybody has it, and it's really this resource that people can tap into. They just need a little bit of guidance, or even just reminders, right? And to be really cognizant of where they're at, and be able to tap into those tools at any given moment. What a gift. So I feel privileged to be able to be talking to you today and share this with everybody.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. And what I love so much about what you shared is that it really is a journey. You moved into this place where you're like, I need something, and you tried yoga and it wasn't good. But then you sort of got your groove and figured it out, and it made some improvements. And then you moved into breath work, and that was good, and you made some improvements. And now you've moved into this, how do you say it? Psilocybin.
Psilocybin. Yeah.
And that has made some improvements even more. And so if you were to, do it all again, or advise me or somebody else, would you still advise as a journey, slowly, one by one? Or would you say, you know what, this is the magic combo, get started right now on all of this together, and that's going to solve what you're looking for?
Yeah, great question. I think it really depends on the individual and where they're at, right? So for me, it was this natural progression. And for others, depending on where they're at in their journey, it can be this real Kickstarter that gets the ball rolling. But having said that, it's not everyone's path, right? And so the best thing to do is to speak to somebody with experience and knowledge, somebody, who you connect with, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be me, or, like, make sure you're feeling a connection with that person. And I would really say to people, like, do your research, right? And just because it doesn't maybe work for you, or again, like you say, like it's a journey, we need, there's lots of different modalities out there, but to find something that resonates with you, for me, this has been all the sort of all the connections coming together. And the psilocybin works in a way that it sort of strengthens the neuroplasticity inside your brain. So as we get older, our neurons don't fire together as quickly as they used to when we were young. That's why we find it difficult to learn a new skill or a new language, something like that, right? Brain fog, all those things. Whereas psilocybin sort of enhances that neuroplasticity, and it sort of rocket fuels you to learn new things or even try new things. So the combination of doing something like psilocybin and then wanting to start a new habit like breath work or even yoga, it can really help sort of fuel that journey and to take away the friction that our monkey mind tends to try and keep us safe, and all that's weird, that's different, we're not used to that. And so psilocybin can sort of open you up to try these new experiences and create these new neural pathways and new habits.
That's interesting because I have not heard about it talked about that way in terms of just, learning and creating new habits. Because a lot of experts in this field, they talk a lot about rewiring the brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're telling me that this is something that can enhance that rewiring process. And if you combine it with whatever it is that you are wanting to put in there, wanting to
Yeah.
develop the pathways for, it can really accelerate your healing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's like I say, a very powerful tool. And it can be anything from, learning yoga, something new like that, or starting a new business. There was this fad not too many years ago where a lot of Silicon Valley like executives were microdosing just because of the pure creativity, that it sort of takes your brain out of this default mode that you sort of go into, that we're all sort of programmed, and sort of opens up like, oh, what about this? And it doesn't feel as unsafe in your body or in your mind. Your mind is like, oh, we can try this. And so in order to create these new habits, and Michael Pollan wrote a book not too many years ago called How to Change Your Mind. And it's a great read for anybody who's wanting to explore this work further. It's not only about mushrooms, but psychedelics in general. And he uses this analogy, and I've heard other people use it before, and I think it's a great analogy, is that, our brain works in almost like a skier going down a hill. And we tend to, our skis go into the run that we did before, right? And we just follow the same track, and then we come back up and we do the same thing, right? So we get that stimulus, and that response is sort of ingrained in us, and we go the same route. Whereas psilocybin and psychedelics in general sort of take that and almost like shake the snow globe with this like fresh layer of snow, and we get to choose the path, right? So for me, that's really exciting, because a lot of the times, especially with things like depression and anxiety, it can be just sort of a habitual thing, right? We get into a state where our mind just automatically goes to worst case scenario, and so it's very hard for us to pull our mind out of that. And hence yoga as well is great, and breath work to get into your body. And so we can feel that resistance, we can feel it in our body, and we're not trying to talk ourselves out of it. We feel it coming up, and then the psilocybin gives you this space between that stimulus and response, and goes, well, we can choose a different way. and gives you that space for options.
Wow, cool. It sounds like a really powerful combination. Now, you teach breath work.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell me about your approach to that and how you got into it. And well, so tell me about your approach to that.
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to. So I teach all types of breath work, but specifically a transformational breath work. So this a typical session would last I always tell people to allow for about 2 hours, but the session itself is about an hour and a half. And we're breathing in this conscious, connected fashion. So we're consciously thinking about our breath, right? I think we take something, between 20 and 40,000 or 30 and 60,000 breaths a day, right? And a lot of those, I mean, how many times do you actually think about the breath that you're taking in? We just take it for granted. So something beautiful happens when you're just lying in a space, comfortable and just focusing on your breath. Yeah, your monkey mind wants to tell you, all sorts of stories and wants to get you out of this uncomfortable feeling. But we breathe in this way we're breathing sort of not heavily, but deeply for at least 20, 30 minutes, sometimes 40 minutes, depending on what the client is wanting to get out of the session. And we're breathing in such a way that it's just no pause at the top, no pause at the bottom. So it's this rhythmic breath, deep as you can, and it's moving all this oxygen and carbon dioxide through you. It starts really moving and releasing things like serotonin, DMT, and this is like a heightened state of, eventually after about 20 minutes, your monkey mind slows down. Something happens called hypofrontality, where that limbic brain sort of quietens and you go into a more meditative place. And breath work is a wonderful way of somatically releasing things that we hold on to, right? So our body being the sort of inherent healer, and we, especially as women, we tend to ignore that voice, right? We're taught at a very young age, for example, the neighbor comes over and it's like, go hug Uncle Timmy, and your body's telling you like, oh, that's unsafe, I don't want to do that. And you do it anyway. And it's just this continuous story. And eventually when we get older, especially as women, like I say, we tend to not trust that inherent feeling that we get, right? So the somatic, like, we have all these things that we hold on, these little big traumas, little traumas, and they get stored in our body, and sometimes we don't even know. That we don't. The wonderful thing about breath work is we don't need to know what it is that we're holding on to. Our breath, our body knows. And so when we can get into that state, when we're breathing in such a fashion, and get into this meditative state, and then I usually, encourage a release. And so then people either, whatever their comfort level is, they sometimes scream, they sometimes laugh, they say, that we have a breath hold. And when they let it go, this energy in the body that's like, and you get this feeling, this euphoric feeling, a combination of all sorts of chemicals going on in your body, but also this somatic release of whatever it was that you've been holding on to for however long. And it's a very powerful practice, and something that people, they report feeling less anxious, they sleep better, digestion helps, there's anxious thoughts, there's many different reasons that people go into it. And, it may not happen for one session, but the more you do it, the more, you can tap into that, the more familiar you get with that feeling and are able to release it.
Right. And so for our people who are listening who aren't sure what you mean by somatic release, I'm just going to sum it up and say it's releasing trauma from your body without having to talk about it. So if,
Basically.
yeah, and just, the both. And so if people want to get started on this breathwork journey, how would you recommend they start?
Yeah, so I mean, the breath is a free tool that you have. And on my website, there is a free 8-minute breathwork session. And this is an invigorating session, great way to start your morning, better than a cup of coffee. And see how that feels for you, right? And then we go from there. There's many different types of breath work. So you can get breath work that will calm your nervous system, breath work that can activate you. If you're going to go into an important meeting and you want to get yourself like charged up, there's all sorts of ways to go about it. And I do host monthly breathwork sessions online, so you can check me out at my website and sign up to be kept in the loop for those. They're very powerful sessions and accessible to the majority of people. So
Fantastic. Well, I will drop all of Taryn's links in the description below so that you can go ahead and access that 8-minute breath work. Now, I don't know anything that's better than coffee, so I am excited to take a look at it, give it a try, and see how that goes. So, Taryn, thank you so much for being with us today. Before we sign off, do you have any last words for our audience?
Yeah, I guess the one takeaway I would say for people is there's hope. If you're going through something in your life, and we all are at one point or another, just because something hasn't worked for you in the past, or your doctor's telling you the story, like tune into your breath, take a minute, come back into your body, because really at the end of the day, your body, know what's best for you. And it's, like you say, a journey, and it's trial and error, and don't give up hope.
Wonderful. Those are beautiful words. Thank you so much, Taryn, for
Thank
sharing this
you.
vulnerable journey with us today. And I appreciate meeting you. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Hit subscribe and let's see if we can make life balance the norm. To the person who stole my glasses, I will find you. I have contacts.